I have been MIA for about a month. I have been pushing as much reading as I absolutely can. So far this year, I have read 71 books. I'm currently working on my 72nd. Will we finish it? I don't know. I'm going to be in Chicago for the holidays, which is also why you are getting this video before the year ends. But I just wanted to share with you guys the best books that I've read so far this year. I took this very seriously. I started with like writing down all my 5-star reads, and then I was like making them compete against each other based on like genre, like what are the best books of each genre I've read so far this year. And I think I have some really good stuff. I have 13 books for you. So yeah, let's just get into it. I think I'm going to start with the horror genre. Fair warning, I'm not a thriller person. When I say horror, I really focus on erotic horror. I like stuff that's a little bit weird. I like it to make me be like, what the fuck is happening? So I have 2 books from that category, and the first one is going to be To the Bone. I found this on Instagram. I think it was in like a Weird Girl Winter Instagram stack. I absolutely devoured this book. I wish more people were talking about it. This is focused in Jamestown, like the colonial settlement Jamestown, where they all ended up like eating each other. It's a sapphic romance that takes place during that period, and our main character is Ellis, who is an indentured servant who came to America after leaving everything behind due to having a lot of death in her family and just kind of looking for like a fresh start, and also trying to find her father, who up and left and she hasn't heard from since. But it follows just kind of what her day-to-day life would be like as Jamestown started to face famine, starvation, and also dealing with the Native Americans, or like the indigenous people. It is very heavy, and there's a lot of things that go into it. I know I told you it's a sapphic romance, and it is. You see Ellis and her best friend Jane kind of fall in love, but then you also get Ellis's home life, and as I said, she is an indentured servant. And it's very rough. It's basically her taking care of this married couple that just treats her like dog shit. And there are some very heavy themes of, I don't want to say forced pregnancy, but like maybe coerced pregnancy, like doing what a woman is supposed to do. There's themes of abortion, and it just like, as you could picture colonial gender norms and that society would be. I will say it is a very heavy read. Obviously, I told you there's cannibalism. It's Jamestown, right? And all of it just kind of ends in a really sad way. This is one of those books where there is like no happy ending. There's really no happiness in it at all. Even the love story is quite tragic. But I have just never read something like this. It's a pretty short read. I want to say it's only about 230 pages, but I think it's worth it if you can get your hands on it. Incredible. Next is a book that everyone has talked about this year. This is Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen, which focuses on twin sisters Sarah and Lucy. This book is gothic, it's erotic, it takes place in 1887 Denmark. And it starts with, as I said, twin sisters Sarah and Lucy. On Sarah's property, there is a bog, and her husband end up discovering a body. She becomes obsessed with it, needs to know who this body belongs to, who this person once was. And she sort of enters this state of mania. And then you see her sister Lucy, who starts to get letters from Sarah and from Sarah's husband saying, you need to come here. I'm not well. Her husband's like, she's talking to random people. She hears voices in her head. And Sarah's like, get this girl out of my damn head. And so when I initially went into this, I was like, okay, it's gotta be like a schizophrenia type thing, like, you know, mental health, mental illness. And it just goes so bananas throughout this book. There's a lot of secrets and just the most insane the most insane stuff. The reason that I think this book is so popular is because it is just one giant, like, what the hell is happening right now? At no point did I ever know where we were heading. I would love to be inside of Joanna's mind. I'm not gonna tell you, obviously, what it ends up being, or whether it ends up being paranormal or schizophrenia or whatever it may be, because I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give away the like shock factor, but I will give a fair warning and say that it does deal with a lot of self-mutilation, cannibalism. There is a topic of child loss that does get very graphic at some parts. I didn't ever feel like it was very overwhelming, but you know, everyone deals with that differently. So yeah, I mean, everyone's talking about it and it's for very good reason. This is actually what like got me into horror so heavily this year. I was like, oh, well, wait a minute, because most of the horror I've been recommended has been like thrillers, ghost stories, not really my thing, but this was absolutely incredible. I would give it 6 stars, a 6-star read. Yeah. I'm going to, I feel like it's kind of funny going from horror to contemporary romance, but I only have one contemporary romance that I rated 5 stars this year, and that was Problematic Summer Romance. You can read this on its own, it is its own novel, but if you've read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, this kind of goes off of that, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did not care for Not in Love that much. I didn't really like Rue. I feel like out of all the Ali Hazelwood books, it was just kind of okay. But this, oh, it was so good. I finished this in 2 days. If you don't watch my channel, if this is your first time seeing me, hi. I am not really a contemporary romance person. It's just a little bit too cozy for me, but when it's good, I do love it. This is centered around Eli from Not in Love, his younger sister Maya, who's 23, and his best friend Connor and business partner, who's 38. So it is an age gap romance, and if you're like, ew, I don't like that, don't worry, I don't like that either. But I think that Ali handled it so perfectly. I think she did such an incredible job with this book. I was never really grossed out, like, at any part of it. I was like, oh wow. But these two are basically in forced proximity of each other as they are attending a wedding in Italy. And it kind of does like a little past and present moment where you'll be in the present and you're like, why do they hate each other so much? And then you'll get a flashback to like a year or two ago and you're like, oh, basically these two have a lot of baggage and they are very much in love with each other, but they just cannot seem to work it out. It's very push and pull, very much like figuring yourself out and then coming to one another and being like, hey, let's figure this out. Which I feel like is very common in romance novels. But like I said, Ali just did such an incredible job with this book. She's so funny, she's so witty. I loved it. I have 2 nonfiction books for you. I think I read 4 nonfiction books total this year, and 2 of them ended up being in the best books I've read so far for 2025. So I was on a Black Plague kick. I still kind of am. I think I'm gonna make a video on all my Black Plague books, but the thing that really kicked it off was The Great Mortality. This is a bit of an older book. It came out in 2005, but you guys, this book is so fascinating. You know how sometimes when you read a nonfiction book, it kind of feels like you're just reading a textbook? That's how I felt whenever I was reading Venus and Aphrodite. I tried to read Plagues and People, and it was just a little too academic for me. I don't know. I truly just kind of felt like I was reading a textbook. But this feels like you're sitting at dinner with your friend who is truly just so passionate about something. The way that this is all put together and all the research that went into this, amazing. It is essentially the very start of the plague as far back as we can trace it, like even to when the little bacteria was growing in the Ice Age. And it goes through how it ended up spreading through Asia and all the way to Western Europe. It's gross, it's gritty, it is incredibly sad and depressing at times. I think that I cried twice while reading this book, especially when it talks about children who died of the plague. But it really goes into so much, and it uses a lot of journal entries, old church records that we have. Like, he really dug into so much stuff. I want to say the last like 80 pages of this book are just straight references. These are all the reference pages. I can't say enough good things about this book. I know a lot of people really aren't into nonfiction, and for the longest time I was not either, especially after I finished undergrad. I was like, I don't want to look at another nonfiction book. I need fiction. I need something to take me away from all this. Okay, my second nonfiction book is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory. This is by Caitlin Doughty, or Ask a Mortician on YouTube. I love Caitlin. I read her other book, Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs, which is like where she answers questions about death. I read that a few years ago. It was super funny. It was great. I picked this book up because I have a fear of death. I haven't always, but I'm a mom, and I won't get too into it, but whenever I was 20, I helped in a very bad car accident that happened in front of me. And it was just kind of like one of those moments that you have in life where you're like, oh shit, like everything is so fragile. And it stuck with me, of course. But then also when I had my own child, my fear of death just like, so obviously we're all going to die. We'll all be worm food one day. It's inevitable. But I picked up this book to kind of help me come to terms with the fact that we're all going to die. And this is basically Caitlin's experience. She has a bachelor's degree in medieval literature, I believe. But whenever she was out of college, she couldn't get a job. And so she picked up a job at a crematory. And this is basically all her life lessons, what she has learned about death, how she has come to terms with death. And there's also some really interesting history in this book, why we treat death the way we do in Western civilization, how other like more remote, I guess, colonies of people treat death and like what their practices are. And then it also talks about basically how we live in a capitalist hellscape, and even in death we cannot escape it, and how the mortuary system still needs to make a lot of money. And you know, did it help me get over my fear of death? Not really. I cried a lot while reading that book. It was pretty heavy, even though Caitlin is very funny. I want to say it took me 4 days of like really sitting and going through it, but it's her real life accounts. And you know, as I said, there's a lot of history and stuff in her story, but then she also tells stories of the families that she encountered while working in the funeral industry. And it's sad because it's other people's lives and them losing their family members, losing their children, losing their parents. So it is heavy, And even though it didn't really help my fear of death, it was very insightful and I loved it. On to something a little bit more fun and not as heavy. My best romantasy reads of the year. If you watch me, you know I'm very critical of romance, but when it is done well, when it is done right, romantasy. I'm critical of romance too. I feel like romance and romantasy have become such a money pit for people and publishing companies, and so they just pump out as much as they can. And sometimes it just ends up being shit because of it, you know? But when it's done right, when it is done well, I really love it. So, my favorite romantasy series of the year is Heavenly Bodies and Fallen Stars. This is the first book. This is the sequel that came out last month, late November. I took notes on this book because it is centered around Greek mythology, horoscopes. Yeah, due to Fallen Stars being the sequel, I can't give you too much on that, but for the first book, for Heavenly Bodies, we start out with Princess Alara, who has been cursed, and she has to flee her kingdom due to her parents being murdered, due to trying to break this curse to protecting her own citizens, and she ends up having to go to enemy territory where she meets Prince Lorenzo. I know that like some of you are probably hearing this and you're like, this is like every romantasy. I know, but they basically have like a little enemies to lovers thing going on. What makes this romantasy stand out so much for me is one, Amani's writing. I feel like she is so creative. While the tropes may be the same as your generic romantasy, her writing and her world building is absolutely phenomenal. I would say it gets even better with the second book. As I said, I can't tell you too much about this without spoiling this, but the use of the zodiac in this is amazing. The plot twist at the end was actually surprising and incredibly intriguing. I know that sometimes you can just like tell where it's going. That's kind of how I feel about Sarah J Maas books. Like, you always know where it's heading. Even the plot twist, you're like, yeah, I could have seen that coming. But I think that Amani did a phenomenal job with these books. I even went ahead and I pre-ordered the third one. Specifically, I paid the extra to get the Waterstones one because it's beautiful and it's autographed. That's how much I love this series. It's phenomenal. Give it a whirl. I know some people said that they didn't like the dialogue. I think that was the main critique of the series so far, is that the dialogue feels a bit juvenile. And I will tell you, as someone who does not handle cringe well, and as someone who has no problem DNFing a shitty romantasy novel, I didn't feel that way. I didn't. It is very much like mushy, kind of, but I flew through that first book and I flew through that second book even faster. That second book is phenomenal. And I usually don't feel that way about sequels. I feel like sometimes as series like go on, it's kind of like, okay, come on. But that sequel was even better than the first. So I can't wait for the third. Next, I have another romantasy. I feel like this leans more into fantasy with a romance plot line, but it can honestly go either way. This is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I know that people are probably sick of hearing about this book. It came out earlier this year. People have had plenty of time to read it and everyone seems to love it. It's not very shocking to see it in people's like 6-star reads or the best books they've read so far this year. But I cannot get enough of this book. I think about it almost every day. It is so creative. I love Rachel's mind. She's one of my favorite authors, period, and she only has 3 books out. So I did have to Google the female main character's name. I believe it is pronounced Sybil. That's how I've been pronouncing it in my head. That's how Google says it's pronounced. I don't think it's Sybil. That doesn't feel like it sits right. But this book follows Sybil, who is a diviner, which means that she can dream and see the future or see omens. It is insane. We start out in a cathedral with Sybil and other diviners who are drowned in order to come back and basically tell royalty or anyone who can pay the price what their future looks like. And as the tenure for these diviners is coming to an end, I believe they have to give the church like 10 years of their life and then they're able to go. As the tenure is coming to an end, diviners start missing, or Sybil's sisters, as they're called. And she's kind of like, where the hell is everyone going? She ends up reaching out to a knight that is visiting the cathedral, whose name is Roderick, and he is very not into the whole diviner thing. It just doesn't make sense to him. He has a lot of questions about it, and that's kind of where him and Sybil really butt heads, because she's been at the cathedral since she was a little girl. She doesn't really remember much of her life before it, and so she's like, what do you mean? Like, hello? And he's like, take a look around. And so it becomes this thing where she's trying to find her sisters, but of course there is a lot of things that she learns about herself. There's a lot of things that really question her beliefs and kind of makes her be like, wait, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. It is a really beautiful story. It's a very creative story. I specifically love the gargoyle, who's a little side character. I think he's worth reading the book for, honestly. I don't think that the book would be as good if it wasn't for him, because it deals with some pretty heavy stuff that's actually quite depressing, but he is the comedic relief. I love it so much. I bought it for my mom for her birthday, and she is not a fantasy person, but she couldn't get enough of it. She was like, this is actually really good. I was like, I told you. So yes, I know you've probably already read it. If you're here, if you're subscribed to me, I know you've probably already read it. But if not, go ahead and grab it. I record on my floor because it's just easier with these stacks of books around me. But the worst part is like my foot fucking always falling asleep. It never fails. Okay, next is, this is technically in the fantasy category, but this kind of has the same thing going on for it the way The Night and the Moth does, where it could be a romantasy if you wanted it to be. This is Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This is a fairly new book. I want to say this came out in early November. I hadn't heard anyone talk about this, but the reason that I picked it up is because this was in the adult Fairy Loot box, which I don't have, but I loved the art for it. I'm a sucker for anything Roman inspired. You guys, I'm like shocked that no one wants to talk about this. This book was incredible. It is Greco-Roman inspired. It takes place in a Greco-Roman city that is undergoing its own kind of form of, I guess, civil war. If you don't know what a magistrate is, if you go back in ancient Rome, they were kind of like what we would consider as like an attorney general now. They were able to put the death penalty on people, but then they also oversaw a lot of the city's like financial stuff. Like when you would have grain stores back in the day, they would oversee that too. Just a lot of power, and it was one of those things that wasn't elected. It went by bloodline. So that is where we are starting. There is a civil war basically between the citizens of this city and the magistrates, the rich people, the wealthy bloodlines that are controlling everything. And you're basically seeing the politics of all that, which is super intriguing. But along with that, there is also a romance going on between Maris, who is the daughter of a magistrate that recently passed, and she is now having to take on that role. And what is his name? Oh my gosh. Luca. I wanted to make sure I got that right. Who is a legionnaire. He's not in charge of the army, but he's basically the one who started the revolution. And you get the present, which is the Civil War that's happening and all the politics that go into that, but then you get the past, which is how Maris and Luca fell in love. And it all ends up coming back to the present eventually. But Adrian is an incredible writer. I think that's what makes this book so good. This is the first book I've ever read by her, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I think, I don't know, I mean, these are all the best books I've read so far this year. Obviously, that's the point of this video. But if I had to put one on the top, I'd maybe put this as like the second or third. It was so good, and I'm trying to put like my friends on it, but all my friends are kind of like mainly romance readers. Like they couldn't give less of a fuck about like the war and the politics that goes on. If you are into fantasy but you like a little bit of romance to break it all up, I think that this is absolutely perfect. This is my perfect book. I believe that it is going to be a duology too, and that the second one comes out next year, so I'm very excited for that. Next in my fantasy category, these are the last ones. This is The Priory of the Orange Tree and A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, the Roots of Chaos series. As you can tell, these boys are thick. They're thick, okay? I read both of these this year. I read this, I want to say in February, and then I read this one over the summer, probably in like July, I believe. They are a part of the same series, but they are also their own standalone novels. Now, I'm going to warn you, trying to explain these to you, I think this one's 805 pages and this one's like 836. And they're both epic fantasies. So trying to explain the plot of these to you might be a lot. What I can tell you though is that they are both very heavy in feminist themes. Both of these books follow multiple characters. You get a lot of POVs, which is why the book is so long. I want to say they're like 4 POVs each, four or 5. But there's a lot of strong women in here, and it deals with differing religions, differing politics, and dragons who are trying to destroy the world. It's a lot, okay? It's a lot, but it's worth it. I promise it's worth it. These are some of the best books I've ever read. I haven't read The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I have the first book. I started it. I haven't really gotten super far into it. Like I said, I'm all over the place. But please, 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 if you have the time, if you want something that's big to really like, I don't want to say challenge yourself because I don't think that they're hard reads, but if you're maybe like, I want to read a big fucking book, bitch. Those, okay? Those. They're so good. Also, newer. There is a novella that goes with these. I personally didn't find the novella to be as good as the actual books themselves, but it wasn't a bad read by any means. I don't think Samantha could write a bad book ever. Next, this is general fiction, technically, but it is also a Greek mythology retelling, a feminist Greek mythology retelling. This is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This is my #1 book of the year. This is my favorite book of all time. If you read anything I've recommended, please pick this up. This is essentially bringing Ariadne to the forefront. She is a part of a lot of Greek myths, but she's oftentimes put on the back burner. And we start at the beginning of her life. It kind of talks about how she grew up as like, I believe she's the Princess of Crete. I should have probably Googled that before I started talking. It's been a few months since I've read this book. Like 8 months. I believe she's the Princess of Crete. Yeah. And it basically talks about her family dynamic, her siblings, and how her mother comes to be pregnant with the Minotaur. I knew about the Minotaur. I had no idea that that was Ariadne's half-brother. And through that, we meet Theseus. I won't spoil it and tell you what happens with Theseus, but Then we also meet Dionysus. And through all of this, through Ariadne's life, we're also getting little pieces of Phaedra or Phaedra, depending on where in the world someone is. In America, I've always heard people say Phaedra, but whenever I watch YouTube videos of like classical scholars who are in Europe, they always say Phaedra. I'm not sure. If you know, let me know. But Phaedra, I'm gonna say Phaedra. Phaedra is Ariadne's sister, and they end up getting separated, and they both go in very different directions. This book has made me so emotional. It is essentially a book about how women are always punished for the acts of men, even if they have nothing to do with the horrible things that a man has done, they are still the ones to be punished for it. And then there are also a lot of themes of motherhood in it. Like I said, I won't spoil it, but it was an incredibly emotional read for me. This book messed me up the same way that the Song of Achilles did. While the Song of Achilles is really focused on love and that like deep heartbreak that makes me cry every time I read it. Guys, I've read that book 4 times. I've sobbed every single time. This was just like a gut punch. Like I said, it is a feminist retelling, and Jennifer like really focuses on what it is to be a woman, and dear God, it killed me. It killed me. I was so emotional. I didn't read anything for like a week and a half after finishing this. Truly, I know I said I think about The Night and the Moth every day. I really do think about this book every single day. I recommend this to anyone who will listen to me. I bought this for my sister for Christmas, so I hope she's prepared to cry. My last 5-star read of the year, it is a graphic novel, and that is Lore Olympus. I have, you can see behind me right here, I have up until volume 7. I flew through the series. This is a comic that started on Webtoons. Is that the website? And it is written by Rachel Smythe, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. It is a more modern retelling of Hades and Persephone. It's dramatic, it's romantic, it's funny, it's a comic, right? Don't take it too literal. When Googling this so that I could get all my thoughts together, like I said, I took notes, I accidentally stumbled across a subreddit where people were like, this book's dog shit. Like, if you're looking for an accurate representation of the stories of Hades and Persephone, this is not it. This is all for fun. It's floof. It very loosely follows Greek mythology, but like I said, it's funny, it's dramatic. It's just meant to be a love story. I flew through this and I actually had to stop buying the physical copies. This is the paperback, which I believe runs 20 bucks, but the hardcovers are 30. And because it's a graphic novel, I mean, you guys can see, like, I read 2 to 3 of these a day. And when I got to volume 7, I had already spent over $200 on these physical copies. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna download Webtoons. I think I paid 15 bucks and I was able to fit in what would be 4 books. So like, if you want to read it, I would really recommend getting the Webtoons app and then just paying for the credits for that. It is so much cheaper than buying the actual physical copies of it. But it is an incredible art style. It is so beautiful. Ugh, God, I can't get enough of it. Yeah, I love it. I love all of these. I think I've said that for every single one. I'm like, oh my God, I love it. I love it. It's good. It's good. I think it's also a really great like palette cleanser. I believe I got into Lore Olympus after I finished Priory of the Orange Tree. So that makes sense. I will give a bit of an honorable mention to some books that I read that almost made the cut. The first one is going to be The Raven Scholar. that book, if you like like trials, I cannot recommend that book enough. It is so, so, so well written. It is one of the most well written books I have ever read. The world building, phenomenal. It's got a little murder mystery going on in it. The reason that it didn't make the cut for me is because I don't like trials. I don't like trials. I can't get into them. I feel like every fantasy book has trials and I'm just trial burnt out, girl. But I've seen the other reviews for it. Everyone says the same thing I do. It's so well written. It's like shocking how well written it is. I will also say I think it has one of the highest ratings on Goodreads I've ever seen a fantasy novel have. Or I don't think it's a novel. I think it's going to be a part of a series. But I was shocked at how good that Goodreads rating was, and then I read it and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't think I've ever read something where so many people are like, this is one of the best books ever. Next is my current read. I haven't finished it, so I can't tell you what it's about. There's like, how many pages are in here? It's 715 pages. I am only on page 159, but that is Empire of the Vampire. I picked this up because people on TikTok were saying that this is the best vampire series ever, period. Men and women. They were like, no, no, no. If you're gonna read something, you have to read that. I went into Barnes & Noble looking for the second Death of Locke, couldn't find it, but I saw this sitting there and I was like, oh, I've had that written down. Let me snatch it up. I feel like I fucked up putting it off for so long. Like I said, I can't really give you a detailed, like, not plot, synopsis of the book because I'm only on page 159. But I know it's gonna be a 5-star read. I can feel it in my bones. What is his name? Jay Kristoff. I was not familiar with your game. Now I know. And lucky me, I believe the series is still ongoing. I know some people don't like reading series unless they're finished. I love it. It gives me something to look forward to. It's kind of like Christmas when a new one drops. Anyways, this video is probably going to be like 40 minutes long. I can already tell. How long have I been recording? Almost an hour. So I will leave you here if you made it all the way through. Thank you so much for listening to me talk. It means the world to me. And yeah, happy holidays. Oh my gosh. I will see you next time. Okay. Mwah. Bye.